Carmageddon TDR 2000 is a perfect example of how much of a crapshoot it is to hand over the reins for your series to someone else. What I mean is that after Carmageddon 2, Stainless went on to bigger and better things, which left another developer called Torturously Games to carry on the legacy. They did poorly. I'm aware that there are people out there who actually like this game, and fair enough, there's a few things to like about it, but there's also a few things to hate about it, which I very much did. I don't like to be negative on this channel, but sometimes you gotta crawl through the mud, especially when you're taking a look at a whole series through all its ups and downs. If you're averse to any variety of swearing, insults, or any variety of adversarial posturing, then this might not be the video for you. If you're in the mood to listen to some impotent nerd rage though, then buckle up, because today we're playing none other than... It's a fairly common occurrence in the entertainment industry for the demand for a specific franchise to outlast the original creator's willingness to work on it. Most people who make games or books or movies don't want to be weighed down to one specific setting or set of characters and eventually seek to spread their wings with new stories. The issue with this is that when something makes money, the suits want it to keep making money until the broader public becomes sick of it. This is a cycle that we've seen with many franchises and trends, and Carmageddon was no exception. After the release of Carmageddon 2, Stainless was burnt out. The development of the sequel had taken a toll on the studio, who were forced to rush the production in order to meet the release date. Plus, the studio wanted to pivot to work on a new title, a game called Arena AD that I couldn't find any information on other than the title. SCI agreed to give Stainless a break from the series, but when NBA types see $, ain't nothing stopping them, so they contracted out work on a third game to a studio called Taurus. Taurus is primarily known for nothing at all, because other than this game, pretty much their entire catalog consists of adventure games based on everything from Shrek to Scooby-Doo. They were basically a production house dedicated to churning lower budget titles using existing IPs in order to make a quick buck, or at least as quick of a buck as you can make in game development. I did some looking, but I couldn't find any specific details regarding the story of this game's development, which makes sense considering Taurus had and still has no connection to the community of people surrounding the Carmageddon series. So most of what we do know about its production comes from devs at Stainless who didn't work on the game and didn't even know it was being made until everyone else found out when it was released. Given that they weren't informed at all, the development of the franchise they created had been given to some randos in Australia and Arena AD was just cancelled, they were understandably pissed off but couldn't really do anything about it. From there, the studio was stuck subcontracting out to other studios to help with the development of budget titles before 2006 when they made a full return to game development and began pumping out titles for the Xbox Live Arcade. I got sidetracked a little bit, but the point I'm trying to illustrate with this is that we don't know anything really about what went on in the Taurus offices while TDR was being made, meaning that I can only speculate on why certain things in this game ended up the way they did. Before getting too far ahead of myself, I feel I should give you a story summary. Yeah, for real, there is actually a story this time around, and not just something I threw together while in a daze at 2 AM in service of a joke that I'm not sure landed. Basically, TDR doubles down on the semi-futuristic setting of the original. Around the year 2000, global crime rates begin to skyrocket, and the rich retreat into walled-off utopias. In the absence of any formal government, the regions outside these walled cities begin to experience a total societal collapse. As the gangs on the outside grow more powerful, the governments of the walled cities decide to make use of their nuclear arsenals and destroy most of the planet, turning anything outside the barriers into a wasteland and mutating a significant portion of the Earth's population. The setup of the main story is that Max Damage is attempting to break into one of the walled cities in order to escape the desolate outside wastelands. All of this is illustrated in a tie-in comic series that was posted prior to the game's release, as well as a series of intro videos that play on startup that I didn't watch because if you have a cutscene you want me to see, then you better play that bitch after I click a new game. All things considered, I think that narrative setup is actually really cool. It doesn't really contextualize the races, but it does give justification for the missions. Oh fuck, missions. We'll get to those later, trust me. Anyway, this plot basis serves to give structure to the career mode, as there's now a concrete story unfolding that gives an explanation for things, charting Max's journey across various zones of the wasteland as he attempts to find shelter from hell on Earth. I'll say this, TDR is probably the most atmospheric of the original 3 games. There's definitely more of a sense of place here, so it's got that going for it. What it doesn't have going for it is quite literally fucking everything else. Since TDR is an older PC game, it comes with a contractually obligated headache that's required to get the thing running on any computer made after the Industrial Revolution. While the first two games had their share of annoyances with regards to this, TDR takes the cake in terms of being a bitch to get working. The game comes with a launcher that you have to configure in the right way or else the game just doesn't work, it crashes constantly, and you have to fuck around with the settings in order to be able to play at all past the first level. This is my story with running this thing, and I got off lucky. There are people who just straight up can't even get the thing to launch no matter what they do. I kind of wish I was one of them. Aside from that, I ran into problems with recording this piece of shit. Normally when I use OBS, I just set it to record the game's window since it's the easiest and simplest way to handle that, and recording the monitor means I might accidentally tab out and show everyone my 12TB folder of Overwatch SFM porn. Unfortunately, trying to do things the usual way resulted in this. It's funny, but not conducive to making an entire video. Initially, recording the whole screen was no different, but then it just started to work randomly, which resulted in this. Hey, cool, I get to spend 20 hours playing a dogshit game now. From the start, I knew something was off. The driving controls may have seemed a lot better and the car deformation more advanced, but there was a big red flag almost immediately. Being that this is Carmageddon, I did what any sane person would do and immediately started driving on the sidewalk and mowing down every pedestrian I could. The thing I noticed, however, is that the timer didn't really seem to be going up that much, or at all really. In the first two games, running down peds was an easy way to rack up time on the clock, which meant you could pretty quickly start ignoring the track and explore to your heart's content. Here though, instead of getting 10 seconds per ped, you get like 1. Sometimes none at all. In addition to this, doing damage to your opponents is back to being inconsistent as hell. If you don't get a head-on collision, then with most vehicles, you're not going to do anything. Hitting the sides of a car is pointless, and the back doesn't do much more. This is especially problematic since the opponents are actually focused on the race now, which they still can't beat, by the way, so actually setting up head-on collisions is a bitch and a half. Plus, even when you do hit them, it's the same problem as the peds. You get like no extra time from it. At best, you'll only get like 2 or 3 seconds. Most of the time, you get nothing at all. Pretty much the only things that noticeably increase the clock are destroying enemies, which is easier said than done, picking up time bonuses, which are not exactly common, and hitting checkpoints. Yeah, for real, checkpoints are actually something you're encouraged to go for now. In fact, they're so much more consistent of a resource that it's almost like you're being prioritized to race instead of destroy. Add to this that the clock only goes up to 4 minutes instead of being unlimited like in the first two, and you basically have to consistently forego doing anything other than hitting checkpoints in order to actually progress, which means you actually have to race now? Instead of ramming opponents and killing people? This is fucking haram! I mean, did these people even play the first two games? Carmageddon and its sequel weren't racing games. They were like a parody of the genre that was closer to car combat than anything else. You weren't actually supposed to race. You were supposed to break shit. You were encouraged to do it. Here it's like they don't want you to drive like a psychopath. Fuck is the meaning of this? This is already enough to basically kill the game in the eyes of your average Carmageddon fan, but it gets even worse when you take into account that not only did they bring back the worst feature from the last game, those stupid-ass missions, but they put in even more of them. In Carmageddon 2, each section of the game was divided up into 4 levels, consisting of 3 races and 1 mission, with the exception of the final section, which was 2 races and 2 missions. For TDR, each section is 6 levels, consisting of 3 races, once again, but now with 3 missions, with the game switching between the 2 gameplay types every level. This is fucking mind-blowing. Why the hell would they take the most universally hated aspect of the last game, and not only have it return, but increase its frequency? In the words of a great performer who came before, what were they thinking? The silver lining is that the missions aren't too bad, with a few exceptions. Don't get me wrong, none of them come remotely close to being fun, but most of them aren't torture. There's one early on where you have to shoot bombs at a shark for some reason, and that one sucks, but like 90% of them initially basically just consist of the game having you race around the map collecting shit. Speaking of racing, since you do that with a car, and I have no other idea how to transition to this segment, let's talk about the vehicles in this game. Here's where I can be a little more positive about this game, because the selection of cars in this game is pretty gargantuan. Seriously, there's a lot. You can once again unlock any car as long as you have enough credits after destroying it in a race, so the process of acquiring new ones is fairly painless. Another interesting thing is that you actually have multiple initial options this time around. Unlike the first 2 games, which limited you to max damage as Eagle at the beginning, here you get 6 additional vehicles right from the get-go. This wasn't always the case, but the Steam version comes with the expansion pack which adds these cars and unlocks them by default. The expansion cars are cool, and already the roster of vehicles in this game is incredible. There's some seriously batshit insane stuff in this game. Any pretense of realism or groundedness has been completely abandoned in favor of what is easily the series' most diverse roster. Everything from a Dodge Charger to fucking main battle tank is on offer here, which keeps the player excited to see what insane shit they're gonna go up against in the next race. It's not all rainbows and rim jobs though, because you know they had to fuck something up. You remember how in the first two games each car had an associated driver which helped provide more character and personality to the vehicles? Well, they still have that in this game, with driver names and bios fully coded and written out, but they were never actually implemented for some fucking reason, so the only way you can access them is to go through the game's code. Nothing can just be good with this game, can it? Like the last video, I used a bunch of different vehicles, so I'm just going to talk about the ones that stuck out the most to me. First is the Eagle Mark IV, the default ride. Like the last few, it's fast and tough, good solid all-arounder. Blood and Bones is a go-kart made of flesh with a driver who's like fused to it or something. It's fucked up and horrific to look at, but it also handles really well, goes extremely fast, and can fit into tight spaces better than pretty much any other car. This was my go-to for most of the missions in the game. Jaws is a rocket-powered shark car. I don't think I need to explain further. The Ped Basher is a giant monstrosity that goes way faster than it should and wrecks most cars in like 1 or 2 hits. I basically used this thing exclusively once I got to the second half of the game, as it makes the whole experience much less painful. Lucifer is a hover car that is a bitch to go up against and a bitch to control, plus it's useless for running down Peds and opponents. Useless piece of shit car. Next one. We got a Prius driven by a real doll. I'm just uncomfortable now. Next one. Cool, a monster truck. I bet this thing is really good in this car combat game about running over civilians and crashing into enemies, except no, it's not. It sucks ass because it just drives over other cars without doing any damage and doesn't go fast enough to complete most of the late game races. Dog shit car. Next one. What the flying fuck is this thing? This is the Wheel, which is not only the worst car in this game, it's the worst car in any game. It's an oversized toy that's weak, slow, and handles atrociously bad. It took me nearly an hour just to beat a single race with this thing. Look at this, it spins out if you go for more than like 2 seconds. This thing is barely usable. I get that it's probably supposed to be a joke, but the fact of the matter is that ironically making a dogshit vehicle that sucks ass to use is still making a dogshit vehicle that sucks ass to use. Apparently the driver is supposed to be based on G.G. Allen or something, which makes sense. I can imagine him showing up to a race in some dumb shit like this just to screw with people. You've probably noticed by now, but almost the entire cast of this game is brand new, with the only returning characters being Max Damage and Vlad, for some reason, who I never got a chance to try, but did go up against quite a bit. Unsurprisingly, he was no threat at all, and mostly just ended up going around in circles. Finally, there's a bit to say about the levels. Each act of the game takes place on one giant level. The first level is Hollywood, which is a sunny suburban environment. Next is a more metropolitan area. I really like the color palette here. It's very otherworldly and reminds me of a lot of early Xbox games. Third is the docks. I have nothing to say about this place. It exists and is fine, I guess. Fourth, we've got the slums, basically a more destroyed version of the previous city that also has a color scheme that I like. Fifth is this military base, which was a bitch to navigate because I kept crashing into tanks driving down the road, and also because I was using the fucking wheel at one point. Sixth is a desert wasteland, and this is where I got some stuff to bitch about. This is when the game started to really piss me off. First off, all of the races on this map have super spread out checkpoints, which makes all 3 of them tedious as all hell. Also, the worst mission in the game is in this section. There's a part where you have to destroy this car that belongs to a gang leader, then he drops a bomb, which you have to deliver to the Thunderdome to blow it up. The problem is that once you destroy the car, you have a very limited window to get the bomb to its destination, which is complicated by the fact that dragging the bomb completely fucks your car's speed and especially handling. I about called it on this game here. It's so incredibly frustrating. You basically have to destroy the target vehicle when it's right next to the dome, otherwise you're not going to be able to get the bomb there in time, but timing everything right is hard because the enemy is so fast, so you have a super limited margin of error, plus you've got a horde of ads trying to skullfuck constantly, and this is just a really impressive level of design and competence. Section 7 is the Necropolis. Underground city, who cares? There's nothing special here other than this nutty mission where planes drop bombs on you. After the Necropolis, you have to cross a bombed out bridge to hop the border, and then you're at the final section of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, feast your eyes upon a level that is the embodiment of the 6th generation sci-fi aesthetic. It runs like shit for some reason, but it has light bridges which are cool. The final mission of the story mode is here, where you have to face off against the chief of police who's driving the suppressor. This mission made me want to go play Carmageddon in real life. You can't kill the suppressor with literally any vehicle in the game, it just insta-kills you on collision, so your only option is to drop a literal nuke on it. It has to be immobile for you to do that though, otherwise he just moves out of the way, so you have to find a way to get him on his back or side, all while these other jackasses are ramming into you, plus the suppressor, which like I said can one-shot you, and oh my fuck, it's like 2 AM, let me beat this fucking game so I can go to sleep. I gave up here and broke my no cheats rule again. I turned the enemy AI off, so they just sat there, and I dropped the nuke off for the boss. He went kaboom, and we get a cutscene where max damage eloquently sums up how I was feeling at this point. With that, the game is over, except it's not, because I have the expansion pack, so there's 3 more sets of levels. I'm tired, boss. Thankfully, they're shorter than the others, with 2 sets, only consisting of 3 races, and the last level being host to only 1. I don't really have a lot to say about these. The 1920s are probably the most traditional set of races, but they suck because the cops are hyper-aggressive and annoying. Hell is a vertical clusterfuck that has a cool aesthetic, but asinine design that once again proves these guys didn't understand why people liked Carmageddon, and Super Speedway is just a racetrack with nothing special about it, who cares? After all was said and done, I had wrapped up my playthrough of the game at 4:30 in the morning, and I went to bed after uninstalling this piece of shit. TDR is a game that makes me sad for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, there's the fact that it basically killed the franchise, with the production souring Stainless's relationship with SCI and ending their involvement with the series for the next 15 years. Secondly, it's the fact that if they had just made a few design changes, namely reworking the timer and taking out those dumbass missions, this actually could have been a good game. The framework of a good Carmageddon title is there, along with some actually cool new improvements, like the fact that Peds are done with your shit and will actually attack you now, which is awesome, but it's completely ruined by overall shit design. Nevertheless, if you're a hardcore completionist for the series, then there might be something here for you. Though for those of you who are curious outsiders, I would steer clear of this one and stick with the first 2. No matter how good a game series is, they can't knock it out of the park every time, and TDR was the quality tax for the series, basically. From there, the story of the franchise only gets more convoluted and messy, but that's a story for another video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna mock my friends who are wimps and play Forza instead of these games. Oh wait, the new Forza apparently sucks too, and now they're playing Helldivers instead. That's better. Only play violent video games. Anything that doesn't have a body count ain't it. Drop all that rated teen shit and play only sicko games. Hey everybody, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks, it means a whole lot. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all your standard YouTube outro stuff that you always hear, and other than that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.